welcome to my first YouTube live. I have so many thoughts I want to share with you guys about Buddhism and the Kagyu tradition. We'll be reading more from the history of the Karmapas, but first I want to talk about, Fashion Week and also the fetishization of certain races. I watched this movie called American Fiction yesterday. It's a great film. You guys should go check it out if you want to learn more about American culture. So the author slash main character, I think his name is Thelonious Ellison. So he's like an intellectual like me, and then he's so fed up with like really flat narratives about Black Americans. And so he decided to troll the industry. Like many things like this happened during the 2010s, if you've been following American pop culture. And he writes like this black book where he's just going off about his hard life as an ex-con, and he pretends to be an ex-con. He pretends in his writing as well as his persona, because there's so much media demanding him to, act as an ex-con, and there's like a huge market for that, like rap music, etc. And in the like he writes a funny ending, and you guys can go like watch it. I'm not going to spoil the plot for you, but he has this great line called "It's just a marketing gimmick." He's trying to like reestablish himself as an intellectual rather than, the ex-con character that he created, but then he kind of fails, and how he fails, you guys should like watch it for yourself. So I drew this, and it really like gave me this inspiration about like tanka paintings. I found this brochure from when I bought the Wheel of Life by Anil Lama. So he created a brochure in order to market the tankas. They were located in Bodhnat. And his competitor was like talking to me, and then he made a photocopy of this brochure, and it's like really well researched. So like if you guys ever end up in Nepal and he's still open, I'm not sure if he's still open or not, you guys should go check him out. Like this is him. I did not meet him. I think I met his partners, and then like I bought the Wheel of Life. According to his competitor, it was overpriced, but it just depends on where you are. He also mentions in this brochure that tankas are more expensive in Tamil, which is like this famous party region, than like near Bodhnat, which is like the place where people go for circumambulation, and there are lots of merchants of Tibetan descent, such as Anil Lama. So like, what are tanka paintings? Are they fetishized commodities in this day and age of capitalism? And what makes it different from like a digital print? That is like the challenge of the 21st century, because a lot of artists now, they just sell digital prints, or they earn like digital currency rather than paper money or physical tankas or physical books. Like books also come in ebooks, etc. And I think Lena Dunham also makes jokes about it in her series about publishing, etc. And it kind of like brought me to think about like, who is the guru, right? Like we have a lot of like discussion about like cult leaders, and like it's like a huge controversial topic. And sometimes for a lot of people, the true guru is the person who grants us physical objects. Like it is very common in Asian culture to just go ask for wealth. In Hinduism, there's goddess Lakshmi, Jai Ma Lakshmi. And in Tibetan Buddhism, there is Zambala. Let me see if there's Zambala in here. Yes, Arya Zambala. This is Zambala. One of the gods of wealth, Arya Zambala, is taken as the manifestation of Avalokiteshvara Singedra. He is said to be a protective deity of Buddha Shakyamuni, Vajrapani, and Guru Padmasambhava. So it is not like that transcendental in the sense that, oh, you can't see who the guru is. The guru manifests, and his power is manifested through granting certain wishes, which include material wealth. So with that being said, we need to protect our monasteries. And March 10th is the Tibetan Day of Uprising. So if you are in any major city with a large Tibetan diaspora, I encourage you to join them in their quest for freedom and human rights. And it's not all just a marketing gimmick. One of the funny things I noticed about Japanese pop culture and American pop culture was that Nike shoes have a lot of like hip hop elements, and then the Japanese consumers really understand how to, play with that, and they really enjoy it. They had like collection sharing videos on YouTube, and I was watching it, and like the cynical view is like, oh, they're just buying, marketing gimmicks from African Americans. But like the more radical reading of their act of buying Nike shoes about hip hop culture or African American culture is like, we are all fetishized under capitalism. So Japanese people are aware of this when they produce manga, when they produce anime, when they serve sushi around the world. They're like really like in on this joke, like, okay, we are human beings, but we're also somehow selling a part of our culture and selves and degrading ourselves to some extent in order for you guys to understand who we are. Like, it's almost impossible not to do that while you're propagating your culture. So with that being said, I am in solidarity with the Tibetans, even though like a lot of people are just like, it's all just a marketing gimmick. I'm not Tibetan, just to reiterate. I'm like, it is like an intersectional solidarity. The third karma, no, we're at the second. Wait. Yeah, the second Karmapa. Okay. He meets a Khan, a Mongolian Khan. The second Karmapa, Karma Pakshi, great master of activity. The era of Karma Pakshi represents an important moment in Tibetan history. For the first time, the reincarnation of a deceased master was officially recognized, thanks to the last testament left by the first Karmapa. This marked the beginning of the system of Dulku recognition in the land of snows. Karma Pakshi was also the first Karmapa to establish tight links with the rulers of neighboring countries. He was invited to Beijing by the Mongols and became the master of Kublai Khan, Wu Bilie, a grandson of Genghis Khan, Genghis Khan, and founder of a Chinese dynasty, the Yuan Dynasty. The second Karmapa is also known for having introduced to Tibet the recitation of the famous six-syllable mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, blessed by the Dakinis. Karma Pakshi was born in Drilung in eastern Tibet in the Wood Rat year 1204 into a family descended from the famous Tibetan king Trisung Detsen, who lived in the 8th century. His parents were yogis, and Karma Pakshi was their last-born child. Just before his conception, his mother dreamt of a sun composed of light emanating from her heart, with rays illuminating the entire world. The pregnancy progressed without any difficulty, and one could hear the famous mantra Om Mani Padme Hum coming from the womb. At the moment of his birth, numerous auspicious signs appeared, indicating that the child would have an exceptional destiny. He received the name Chodsen, holder of the doctrine, and was able to perfectly read and write the sacred texts at barely 6 years old. His parents, convinced that their son possessed rare spiritual qualities, entrusted him to Pomdrakpa, the 9th pearl of the Golden Rosary lineage and former disciple of Drogden Rinchen, to whom the previous Karmapa had given the last testament shortly before his death. Pomdrakpa very quickly realized that his young student was, in his own words, blessed by the Dakinis. This conviction had already been strengthened by a vision in which Dusum Khenpa, the first Karmapa, as well as other Kagyu lineage lamas, surrounded the child's house. Sometime later, Sometime later, Pomdrokpa had another vision of Dusum Khenpa, who announced that Chotsen was his reincarnation. When the child was 11 years old, Pomdrokpa officially recognized him as a tulku of the first Karmapa, ordained him as a novice, and gave him the title Choki Lama, Master of the Dharma. This period was a key moment in the history of the lineage, as it marked the beginning of the tulku recognition system. It was later applied with some variation by all the masters of other schools. After this recognition, Karma Pakshi received from his master the direct teachings on the nature of the mind. He particularly applied himself to studying and rapidly acquired a profound knowledge of the different texts, knowing that later he would have to dispense these teachings himself. He was the focus of the admiration of his intimates for his remarkable gifts of memorization and for his instantaneous mastery of even the most profound practices. His master clearly understood that he had already realized them in his previous lives. Nevertheless, Pomdrokpa wanted the Karmapa to be affiliated with a lineage and to receive the traditional initiations, reading transmissions, and written or oral instructions. Over the following 11 years, he received numerous transmissions of the Karma Kagyu lineage, such as Mahamudra and the 6 yogas of Naropa. He excelled notably in the practice of Tumo, inner heat yoga, to the point that he melted the snow around him for some distance. He very early manifested great compassion for all sentient beings and asked his following to protect animals. He composed treatises related to the 6-syllable mantra of compassion, Om Mani Padme Hum, and declared that the mere reading of these works, even without profound faith in their content, assured a karmic link with him and favored spiritual maturation. So from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Lundrup Choling of Los Angeles usually organizes the recitation of Om Mani Padme Hum, and so I will include a link to all those who are interested in joining our virtuals, or you can go to Los Angeles and join Lama Sonam together in person in the recitation of the 6-syllable mantra. At the age of 22, he received the vows of a fully ordained monk. During these years, the region of Kham was prey to unending troubles. Because of his qualities and charisma, Karma Pakshi was often called upon to aid in the peaceful resolution of these conflicts. Additionally, the Karmapa had achieved perfect control over elemental energy and spontaneously created harmony in the immediate environment. According to history, thus motivated the local deity Dorje Paltsek to protect the Karma Kagyu lineage, establishing the monastic code. Establishing the monastic code. It's all just a marketing gimmick to sell tankas. During a trip in the eastern region of Kham, Karma Pakshi had a vision of Mahakala Bernakchan. So yesterday, the Drukpa lineage also was doing Mahakala pujas, so I'm very thankful to them. Om Mani Padme Hum, and I do not know the mantra of Mahakal. If you are interested in wrathful deities, then you can either check out tankas in Nepal or check out Drupa Monastery. Building a monastery and bringing together monks was a drawn-out task. So the vision of Mahakala prompted Karma Pakshi to construct a monastery in Sharchuk, Pungri. It was on this very site that he perfectly realized the practices of the inner winds. Building a monastery was a drawn-out task. However, it was greatly facilitated by the fact that Tibetan society, especially since the 13th century, was centered on religious institutions. The Karmapa's greatest wish was to develop monastic communities with the utmost respect for the Vinaya, the monastic code originally established by the Buddha. According to this code, every monk receives the traditional attire of the famous wine-colored robe upon taking his vows. The harshness of Tibetan winters requires the wearing of layered multiple robes with thick sheepskins sewn into the underside of a shirt as a protection from the freezing temperatures outside and inside the monastery, where neither the temples nor the monks' cells are heated. So I checked the weather in Ladakh. It is like ranging from 2 degrees Celsius to negative in the evening, like -2, which in Fahrenheit is like 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty cold. I don't know about their dress, but it looks not sheepskin related. Who knows? We'll have to like ask some Ladakhi if they have sheepskin sewn into the monks' robes. When a child arrives in the monastery, roughly at the age of 5, he immediately receives the very first vows that call for 4 principal observances: no killing, no stealing, no lying, and being chaste. In addition, there is a secondary commitment which requires refraining from alcohol and other intoxicating substances. The young monk then dons the wine-colored robe. The subsequent vows are usually taken around the age of 14, but in some cases at 7. They are called novice vows and demand the respect of 36 rules. The vows of a fully ordained monk are taken around the age of 20 and require following 253 precise rules. The monk can be evicted from the monastic community or sangha after infringing the rules of the monastic code. In general, these vows are taken for life, but if it happens that a monk prefers to return to the life of a layman, they can be given back. So during the Cultural Revolution, a lot of sangha members were unfortunately evicted from their monasteries by the Red Guards or by the People's Liberation Army, and some of them were able to return to monkhood after the frenzy of the first few decades of the People's Republic of China subsided. So nowadays, like, I think everyone's really on edge that similar things could happen again. It's just a great activity. Another of his travels led Karma Pakshi to Karma Monastery, founded by the first Karmapa. As the building had suffered the effects of severe weather, he funded its restoration. The different lineage heads were very attentive to the future of their monasteries, which were indispensable to the continuation of their lineage. They traveled all over Tibet, not only to spread the Dharma and bestow blessings and initiations, but also to restore, enlarge, or construct monastic infrastructure and bring their counsel to the monks and administrators. Karma Pakshi decided to go to central Tibet to return to Serpu Monastery, which was founded by the first Karmapa, who had made it the official seat of the Karmakagyu lineage. He left Kham, frequently stopping on the way to bless the people who had come to show their respect and faith. During this journey, many people recalled seeing Mahakala and other deities in his company. This is Mahakala on the cover. It was not unusual for his following to perceive him haloed with an aura or to see multiple rainbows unfurl as he passed, both signs of his elevated realization. Karma Pakshi stated that all those who were bound to him, whether negatively or positively, would more quickly gain liberation from the cycle of existence. Having arrived in central Tibet, the Karmapa visited the principal temple of Lhasa, the Jokhang, in order to pray before the Jowo, the famous statue of the Buddha. Those in attendance saw numerous rays of light emerge from the Jowo and melt into Karma Pakshi. Among his offerings, he left gold to cover the face of the statue. It was then that he had the clear vision of Hayagriva, a wrathful deity from whom arose different aspects of Padmasambhava. This is Padmasambhava. Guru Padmasambhava is also known as Guru Rinpoche, who came forth from Amitabha, the immense Buddha of light. He is well known for his considerable contribution to flourish and extend the Dharma and Buddhism. He was extremely far-sighted with the vast knowledge of Buddhism's future direction. When The second Karmapa, Karma Pakshi, reached Surpu Monastery. He personally oversaw the restoration of its different buildings. However, as the cost of the work was so high, he had to indebt himself, and it was only years later that he was able to pay off the debt thanks to funds from wealthy patrons from the province of Tsang. Shortly afterward, while he meditated at Dakla Gampo, the monastery Gampopa established to the southeast of Lhasa, he had a vision of Gampopa, who prophesied that the Karma Kagyu lineage would spread the blessing of its teachings throughout the world, which is indeed the case today. At this very site, the Indian master Saraha, of whom the Karmapa was a manifestation, appeared to him, as well as the yogi Milarepa, who declared to Karma Pakshi that they were all of the same essence. In another vision, he was instructed by Vajra Yogini to widely spread the communal singing of the famous six-syllable mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, which has since been recited indefatigably, meaning they are tirelessly reciting it, by all Tibetans from a young age and in all circumstances. He and his monastic camp chanted the mantra during his travels. From this time onward, the recitation of this mantra became an important part of Tibetan religious practice. The Mongols become interested in Tibet. In 1235, the Mongols launched an offensive on the northern part of China. The land of snows enjoyed relative peace until 1240, when the Mongols of Godan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, invaded the Tibetan plateau and reached the heart of central Tibet. Unfortunately, there was no centralized power in Tibet, and the only military corps was created by feudal lords, which was numerically inferior to the Mongol armies that were perfectly seasoned in the art of war. This state of affairs, further complicated by internal conflicts, placed Tibet in a clearly vulnerable position. The different Tibetan political heads understood this to be a lost cause, since the Mongol hordes did not hesitate to pillage and burn down monasteries and villages in their path, massacring numerous monks and peasants. Wisely, the Tibetans preferred to negotiate with the descendants of Genghis Khan. Paradoxically, Godan had a great interest in Tibetan Buddhism and desired to introduce it to his people in order to promote their cultural evolution. To this end, he sent emissaries to find a master with incontestable knowledge capable of understanding such a weighty mission. Among the heads of the different Buddhist lineages in Tibet was the greatly reputed Sakya Pandita, spiritual head of the Sakya lineage. The entire country saluted and admired the great wisdom of this master, known far beyond Tibet's borders. Godan was quickly informed of the existence of this great Tibetan scholar and immediately wished to meet him. In 1244, he dispatched a messenger carrying an official invitation letter to which Sakya Pandita had to respond. It was clearly stipulated in the letter that he should immediately present himself before the Mongol chief. Having no other choice but to obey, the Sakya master took to the road with his two young nephews, Pagpa and Chagna, accompanied by the Mongol emissary. The group headed toward the camp of Godan, based in the region of Lake Kokonor in the northeast of Tibet, where they arrived 3 years later. The length of the trip was essentially due to the fact that local populations solicited teachings and blessings from the lineage head on the way. When you watch live streams of like Rinpoches, like Paga Rinpoche, you can also see like many villagers, local people requesting him to bestow teachings. So that's why some Rinpoches would rather travel by car, even if there's an established airplane route, which is like very generous of them and generous of their time. It is not just a marketing gimmick, because how much money do these villagers have? to be honest. Like, if the Rinpoches were just out there for money, they would just like, jet ski through the world rather than like, stay in certain regions that are not as commercially developed. But they still do because they are our bodhisattvas. In 1249, Sakya Pandita received from the hands of Godan himself temporal power over the central region of Tibet. A relationship of spiritual master / worldly protector Cho Yong was established between the two men, which would bring a period of close ties between Tibet and Mongolia. The Mongol leaders guaranteed more or less the military security of Tibet in exchange for Buddhist teachings that the Khan wished to receive for himself and his people. Neither of the parties dominated the other. First trip to meet Kublai Khan. The Mongols had thus become the masters of the Sino-Tibetan borders when, in 1251, the grandson of the great Genghis Khan, Kublai, then governor of the provinces of the West and greatly interested in the philosophy and wisdom of Buddhism, invited the Karmapa to his residence. The lineage head's reputation had reached even his ears. Karma Pakshi was aware of the great importance of the meeting for the future relationship between the two peoples, meaning Tibetans and Mongols. So for those who are not familiar with China, or Asia, inner Asia, it's very confusing that like they are not just one ethnicity dominating, even though like people look more or less the same compared to Europe. I feel like Czech people look very different from Germans, and you can kind of tell. But then like once you reach inner Asia, it's like, who's a Tajik, who's a Mongol, who's a Tibetan? Like if they're not wearing their ethnic dress, I can't even tell sometimes. So Mongols and Tibetans. Okay. In 1254, despite his age and the risks involved, the Karmapa accepted the invitation and was received a few months later by an important Mongol delegation that had advanced to meet him. It was customary to go out to meet important personalities as a sign of respect. The more prestigious the person, the further away they would be met. So people would travel really far from like where they live to meet the person coming their way. Thus, in 1255, the Karmapa was ceremoniously led to Kubilai's residence. Once at the court, Kubilai gave the Karmapa his complete attention and showered him with gifts. The Karmapa's reputation as an accomplished master with extraordinary powers greatly impressed the Khan and his court, and he ardently hoped that his guest would display his qualities before the Mongol religious heads. The Karmapa agreed to satisfy Kubilai's request, and his prestige was further elevated. Enamored, the future emperor wished to keep this great master permanently near him, but Karma Pakshi, refusing to become involved in the intrigue plotted at the court, declined the offer, which gravely offended the Mongol chief. His meditations on Mahakala and Avalokiteshvara strengthened Karma Pakshi's resolve to leave the Khan and move to the Minyak kingdom in the northeast of Tibet. In 1256, this choice proved wise. On his arrival in Amdo, in northeastern Tibet, the Karmapa learned that Kubilai had been dethroned by his older brother, Mongka Khan. The powerful Mongka Khan. Having become all-powerful, Mongka Khan also wished to meet the Karmapa and receive his blessing in his palace in Lanzhou. In the region of Gansu, Karma Pakshi, inspired by the deity Red Tara, accepted the new Khan's invitation to teach the Dharma in China and set out again. During the long journey, the Karmapa used diplomacy to end the local political dissension that he encountered on his path. Upon his arrival, he was welcomed by Mongka Khan, who showed him honor and respect. The Khan liberated all his prisoners and abolished the death penalty at the request of his illustrious visitor. Karma Pakshi produced numerous miracles during his stay and widely disseminated teachings, initiations, and readings of sacred texts. History presents Monka Khan as a bloodthirsty tyrant before his encounter with the Karmapa, which proved to be a decisive meeting that made him become one of the most remarkable rulers in Mongol history. A profound relationship based on mutual respect was established between the two men, and the Khan became one of his faithful disciples. The great Tibetan master revealed that they had already met in their previous lives. Monka Khan and other disciples received the Chakrasamvara initiations, and it is said that the Mongol chief easily succeeded in visualizing the deity, which proved his karmic link with this practice. Chakrasamvara is the blue deity that is the Yab to Vajrayogini's Yum. Yab means more of the male energy or male divine, and Yum is the female divine, which is embodied by Vajravarahi or Vajrayogini in the Kagyu tradition. So that's why Palga Rinpoche's meditation bell, as he explained in one of the podcast interviews, has both red and blue. Yeah. Monka Khan would certainly have the particularly beneficial relationship between the Karmapa and his host reaffirmed the peace between the different peoples. The Karma Pakshi made Monka Khan promise to equitably protect all the Buddhist lineages. The Karmapa and the Khan traveled through the Mongol Empire, where Karma Pakshi bestowed teachings and conversed in the capital, Karakorum, with representatives of the different religious factions of the period. Having arrived at the Sino-Tibetan border around Minyak, the Karmapa chose to return to Tibet. Monka Khan would certainly have preferred to keep such a prestigious master near him, but in contrast to Kubilai, he respected Karma Pakshi's wishes. The Mongol chief then gave him the official documents necessary to travel freely in his land and across borders without difficulty. During his return trip, the Karmapa learned that Monka Khan had died and that his death resulted in power struggles and difficulties in China. His son, Alapaga, acceded to the throne first, but Kubilai returned to the forefront of the political scene and mounted a conspiracy with a few clan chiefs. He thus succeeded in 1260 in deposing Alapaga, who was killed. Kubilai's revenge. The Karmapa's return journey was troubled by these events, and he sensed the imminent danger. Kubilai Khan had not forgotten the affront he thought himself to have suffered some years earlier. Influenced by instigators in his court, he was convinced that Karma Pakshi had plotted against him with Monka Khan. He therefore decided to have the Karmapa assassinated and sent troops in pursuit. The soldiers succeeded in arresting the Karmapa and quickly set themselves to carrying out Kubilai's orders. They desperately tried many times to inflict the worst tortures on him, burning him at the stake, poisoning him, throwing him off a cliff. Nothing worked. Once Kubilai was informed of these events, he decided to send Karma Pakshi into exile in the desert, hoping that he would eventually die of privation in this savage environment. Savage Fenty. Savage environment. However, not only did the Karmapa withstand the new ordeal, he even succeeded in drafting a number of religious texts. Finally, Kubilai understood that he was dealing with an exceptional master and begged forgiveness. Moreover, he offered him gold and asked him to stay at his court. Karma Pakshi refused the gold but agreed to stay with Kubilai for some time and bestowed new teachings upon him to renew their bond. When Karma Pakshi desired to return to Tibet, this time Kubilai acquiesced, giving the Tibetan lineage head his freedom and assuring him that he could spread the Dharma everywhere without fear. It was during this period that Marco Polo lived at the Mongol court of China. In his writings, he makes reference to Tibetan lamas capable of accomplishing miracles and recounts festivities in the great reception hall, where the great Khan presided at a table floating many meters above the ground with goblets that mysteriously set themselves before the host and his companions. The statue of the ornament of the world. During one of his meditations, Karma Pakshi had a vision of Shakyamuni, the Buddha, telling him to construct a Buddha statue in Sirpu as it would aid in the spread of the Dharma. The protectors also appeared to him, promising to support him in this work. Without hesitation, the lineage had delegated this task to one of his disciples, who immediately left for Sirpu with the gold necessary to pay the artists. The emissary also carried a message with specifications for the master craftsman named Pakshi, so that the work would perfectly correspond to the vision of his illustrious master. So yeah, paintings, artwork, etc., require a lot of study. I think like training period is like a decade. You can watch more videos on that, and I will also start learning more about the proportions and how people, learn calligraphy, stuff like that, so we keep our minds in high vibrations. Thanks for listening, and we will continue the biography of the second Karmapa, as well as some background on Sirpu Monastery in our next episode. Take care. How do we end this?